إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله صلوات الله وسلامه عليه وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن اتبع سنة إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد. Last week, Sheikh Yasser spoke about in the khutbah Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam and his surrender to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is obviously in understanding that we are in the season of Hajj. And so usually when we're talking about the season of Hajj, we talk about Prophet Ibrahim and his family, but usually we focus on Prophet Ismail and Prophet Ibrahim alayhim salam. But I'd like to take a slight detour than the usual tradition of focusing on Prophet Ibrahim and Prophet Ismail and focus on Lady Hagar, or as Hagar is found in the Hebrew Bible. Because Lady Hagar, while she was not a prophet, she went through immense difficulty and sacrifice just like Ibrahim and Ismail. And her sacrifice and her surrender was one that we can take many benefits from. Now just take it, I want you to picture being a young woman, a newlywed, just giving birth not too long ago. Your son is still suckling, and you and your husband go on an arduous journey from Egypt all the way to the Arabian Peninsula to what is now known today as Mecca. And Mecca, even till today, is a barren land. A barren land made of volcanic rock, which at that time no one was living in that land. There was no water, there was no food, and there weren't people to aid in. And so being a newlywed with your new infant son, still suckling, your husband then decides to leave you and turn around, only with a bushel of dates and a small bladder of water. And rightfully so, Hajar alayhi salam, radiallahu anha, she was confused about what was going on. How can a husband leave his child and his new wife in this barren land? So rightfully so, she asked Ibrahim alayhi salam, where are you going? How are you going to leave us here in this barren land? And Ibrahim didn't respond. And she repeated this numerous times until something changed. Her perspective of what was going on shifted. And immediately with that shift, she changed her style of questioning to, is this something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded you with? Ibrahim alayhi salam responded simply with yes, without even looking back at his family. And she said, well then that's okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care of us. Now let's stop right here in the story. Think about not only what Ibrahim alayhi salam was feeling, not even being able to look back at his family, leaving them, trying to fulfill the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but imagine being a newlywed wife with your infant son, being left in an area, not a barren land like today where we can drive or walk, a mile or two and there's a gas station, or we can find sustenance somewhere. We're talking about a barren land where there's no sign of anything. And your husband is doing this, leaving you there without anything. Imagine the feelings that are going through her mind. But what enabled her to shift from questioning her husband to then understanding that this has to be a commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? What enabled her to have this shift so instantaneously and so sincerely, but also with so much conviction that she was able to respond with, it's all right, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is never going to leave us. This was first and foremost a line of communication that was between her and Ibrahim alayhi salam. She was comfortable and confident and able to speak to her husband in a way that perhaps, unfortunately, some of our wives don't speak to us today. She was able to confidently question, what is going on right now? But what made that shift? What enabled her to, after questioning her husband, enabled her to understand what the situation was. It was a profound and deep trust, not only in her husband, knowing the man who she married, knowing the caliber of a man who was the father of her son, but more importantly, understanding that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would never leave someone in a state of destitute. She knew that not only was her husband a prophet, not only would her husband someone who had a good connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but she herself had a connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that she knew that this was not something that would happen haphazardly. This is not something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would just leave them in a state of despair. And so this enabled her to instantaneously shift her mode of questioning, from repeatedly asking her husband, what is going on? How are you going to leave us? To immediately understanding, is this something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commanded you with? Is this a commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And so that trust, not only in her husband, but in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, enabled her to have tawakkul at that point. Things went from destitution, things went from despair to conviction and fortitude in the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take care of her and her infant son. But the story continues on. After now having this new conviction, she is trying to take care of her son with this small amount of things that she has. A bushel of dates and a small bladder of water. And eventually, obviously, this runs out. And now she has nothing else. Her milk dries up, and her son now, Ismail, alayhi salatu salam, now starts to become upset. And it started to pain her as a mother to see her son in so much hunger that he's beating the ground in anger. He's starving. So what does she do? Does she just raise her hands in prayer? Does she herself give up hope? No. She goes immediately to the highest and closest mountain, because while she was left in this valley, she went to the highest mountain to see, are there any people? Is there any sign of water? Is there any food off in the distance? But that wasn't it. She didn't stop there. She went immediately from there and ran to the other side of the valley. Perhaps on the other side of the mountains, there's hope. There is food. There are people who will see her in this state. And she didn't stop there just by saying, I look on one side and, Allah musta'an, qaddar Allah ma sha fa'ala, I did what I could. She went back and forth between Safa and Marwa 7 times looking for food for her son, never giving up hope. Perhaps someone new has come. Perhaps I'll see something that I haven't seen before. And in her search, she hears a sound. She hears her son making noise. She hears something going on. There's a shuffle at the feet of her son. So when going back down, she finds water. And in finding water, she fills up her bladder. She fills up the water, the bladder of water that she has. And then she tries to collect the water and tries to make zamzam. She collects the water and makes it into a well. She took advantage of the situation that she was in. And so look at our mother, Hagar, and how she took the situation that she newly found herself in. It wasn't enough just to suffice with what she had. She exhausted all means. She rationed her food. She used it to the best of her ability. And then after exhausting her means, she went between Safa and Marwa 7 times, looking and striving to find help for her and her children. And she had such perseverance in trying to exhaust means. She didn't just go up once and say, Alhamdulillah. She went 7 times between these 2 mountains. And it's not like how it is today. Marbled and air-cooled. We're talking about the middle of the desert, climbing a rocky mountain, leaving your infant son in the middle of the valley, just trying to look for me. This perseverance and this conviction that she has to try to better her situation. She has to make things better for her and her newborn infant son. But after striving for this, having perseverance, exhausting her means, where did the water come from? Where was she able to find refuge? It wasn't from her own actions. It wasn't from the ta'ab, the difficulty that she went in. Allah didn't put the water on the top of the mountain where she was running in between. She didn't see anyone off in the distance, flag them down and say, please come bring some aid. No, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bought the existence without even anything she did. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought the aid at the feet of a baby who obviously could never dig a well. Allah sent the angel to her. So what she did was she exhausted her means. She had full conviction in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She persevered through the difficult times. But with that, that was what she needed to do with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and Allah provided for her. It was nothing that she, her own hands, may Allah be pleased with her, did herself. So brothers and sisters, when we're going through difficult times, when things look meek, when we're in a time where it doesn't look that there is any hope on the horizon, what are we going to do? How will we find ourselves in those difficult times? Do we understand that it's not actually the ta'ab that we're going through? It's not actually the difficulty that we're trying, our sa'i. It's not our running between Safa and Marwa or our striving that actually is going to bring about change or is actually going to bring the fruits of the labor that we're trying to achieve. Hasha, a'udhu billah. It is not from us that brings anything. It is only from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that we will bring about change. And our mother, Hagar alayhi salam, taught us that in this story. In her sa'i, still she found sustenance from Allah. But then when she found the sustenance, what did she do? Was it just alhamdulillah, she filled up her bladder? Alhamdulillah. The Prophet ﷺ said that if she had not collected this water, had she not brought the water together and made the Zamzam, the foundations of the well that we have today, then this water would have ran in a stream and continued on. Mecca wouldn't just have been a place that has a well with everlasting and never-ending water, but we then would have had a stream. She took advantage of the blessings that came. When things came to her, she didn't just take it, use it, she tried to take advantage of it, make the best out of the situation, and preserve the new blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave. So when we find that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses us, what are we doing with these blessings? Do we find ourselves upset because the blessings didn't come in a way that we actually wanted them? I planned for things to happen A, B, C, X, Y, Z, and so they should happen that way because it's actually, I got a job, alhamdulillah, but it's not the one I wanted. Is this how we find ourselves? Or is it alhamdulillah that Allah blessed us with something? With this job, I can take care of my family. With this, I now can better my situation. How do we take advantage of the blessings that actually come to us? Because again, it is not us who has and brings these things. What is the Allahumma salli ala Muhammad, how do we see these things when they come? Is it something that we think that we have done some good towards? Or do we attribute all success to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. There's no might nor power except from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, both in good times and in bad. So brothers and sisters, this has to be the framework that we look about things. This has to be how we look at how we not only establish our families, but how we live our lives when things happen. But Hajar didn't stop there. May Allah be pleased with her. From this point of view, she then established a set of ethos that then carried on into her family. How do we know that? Ismail, may Allah be pleased with him, when his father came to him with the commandment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, having the premonition, seeing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala showed him in a dream that he was going to slaughter his child son. And he came to his son telling him, I've seen in a dream that I'm going to have to slaughter you. What was Ismail's response? As a young child, we're not even talking about it. Some say 15, some say younger than that. But a young boy, how did he respond to his father saying, I saw in a dream that I'm going to have to slaughter you? Immediately, he said, Oh my father, do as you were commanded. You will find me, insha'Allah, from the patient people. This is from the ethos that his parents established in the household. From a very young age, he witnessed his mother having conviction and trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He witnessed his mother trusting in his father when he left her and him in the middle of the desert. Yes, she was able to question. Yes, she felt the comfort in that. but it was in essence her belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that enabled her to persevere through that difficulty. And it was that iman that enabled her to persevere. So now her son, being only a few years elder than that, only being a little bit older than he was seeing that, this was his immediate response. He was able to mimic the response that he saw from his parents. This was an ethos that instilled in him belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This instilled in him a trust in his parents that things are going to be okay. That if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala told me to do that, almost the exact same response that his mother gave years before. Was this the commandment of Allah? Allah will never leave me. Ismail says, "If'al ma tu'mar." Do what you were commanded, you'll find me patience. Immediately mimicking what his mother did just a few years before. So brothers and sisters, when we're raising our children, when we're talking about family planning and having children, what are we doing to instill this sense of iman in their hearts? How are we teaching and instilling a love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that now is hope, now is trust, now is success through any difficult time? Obviously, none of us will ever be tested with that what the family of Hagar and Ibrahim were tested with. We'll never be put in that situation. But when we find ourselves at the end of the month stretched super thin, what do we teach our children? When we find ourselves, when we look like there's no hope on the horizon, what do we teach our children? When things are successful, as they were for Ismail at that time, Ibrahim had come back, his family was reunited, they were going to then establish the Kaaba and build the Kaaba. People had come, he had learned Arabic language, a new city had been built, things were looking very well. But what do we teach our children when things are good? When we're prosperous, when everything looks, alhamdulillah, hopeful? Do we instill in our children still, no matter what comes forward, that we trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Or do we just try to make excuses and make things go? Brothers and sisters, we can be like our mother Hagar and our father Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam. We can be like that. But we have to model what we want out of our children. We have to model first, as Hagar did in herself, what she knew of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. She did it first for herself, but that permeated now into her family and into her son who watched all of this happen. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us like Hagar alayhi salam. Make us like this woman who is an example for us in our lives. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us with the faith of Hagar. Enable us to be like this noble woman. Enable us to have the strength of Hagar. Enable us to have the fortitude and tawakkul on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as Hagar. Enable us to have the perseverance of Hagar. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم لسائر المسلمين واستغفر واتوب. بسم الله الحمد لله وحده والصلاة والسلام على من لا نبي بعده أما بعد. So there are things that we can take from this blessed story, from the Quran and from the Hadith, to impact our own lives in how we live, from a personal perspective and from a family perspective. So for an individual, I now can ask myself, am I doing the best with what I have? Allah has blessed us, brothers and sisters. Let's look at the reality. Allah has blessed us than some people just a few blocks away. Allah has blessed us than some of our own brothers and sisters overseas. We are living in ni'mah. Whether we have or we don't have, comparatively speaking, we are blessed. And so being a blessed people, we now are on a better place. We have more privilege and have a stronger ability to achieve greatness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala already gave us a step ahead. So what are we going to do with the privilege that we have? Are we going to take this and maximize on the things that are in front of me? Am I going to take this and use what I have, whether it's my small bushel of dates or this small bladder of water, and stretch it to be the most that I can achieve out of that? And then with that, I know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala controls things. So with whatever we have, brothers and sisters, we have to make the best of it. Try to use it to all of its capacity. Fight our desires, fight our intellects, fight whatever's happening socially to try to achieve the end result, what we're trying to and striving for, the rida of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the blessing and the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But then with that, we have to persevere. We can't think that it's okay for me to try once and say alhamdulillah. Nothing worth anything in life comes easy. Whether it's building our own selves individually, am I developing the strength and belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Whether it's on a career perspective, am I working hard to achieve greatness in my career? Whether it's even establishing a family, we cannot suffice with what we have. We have to persevere through the difficult times and the good times. When things are difficult, we tighten our belts. We try to push harder than we did before. And when things are easy, things are on a downhill, we run with the wave. We try to do as best we can with that high that we have. But we have to persevere with the intention of pleasing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And make sure that our perseverance is in accordance to that which is pleasing to Allah. Because how many of us strive and never achieve? How many of us strive and we don't even know the proper way to strive? How many of us strive and it's really, though we think it's for Allah, or though we think it's for the betterment of ourselves, in all actuality, it's for my ego and my nafs. Brothers, when your family says something to you, checking you, is it, no, I'm the man in the household? Or is it actually she's saying something that's correct? Sisters, when your husband or your wife or your child says something to you, how do we take that advice? Because wallahi, children sometimes advise. How do we take this as a community when no matter who it is, do we take this advice and we persevere through these difficult times and we strive as a community to achieve Allah's pleasure? Or is it all about me? Is it about my ego? Brothers and sisters, we can do that. Our mother Hagar was in the middle of a barren desert with no water and no people, but she was able to persevere. So what about us? After we exhaust our means and we persevere through the difficult times, the things that we have, we then have to understand that success comes from Allah. That my striving is only to earn Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure. My striving doesn't actually bring fruits. If we think about it from a worldly perspective, I plant the seed, I water the seed, but who is to guarantee that that seed will grow? And if the seed does grow, who is to guarantee that seed will bear fruit, that plant will bear fruits? It's only Allah. Perhaps we didn't germinate the seed. Perhaps, there's many different situations that could have happened. But in reality, who controls bringing the fruit of the labor? Allah. So while we're striving, brothers and sisters, while we're going through these difficult times, we have to understand that success comes from Allah. And with that, we have to humble ourselves. We have to understand that we, in comparison to Allah who is Akbar, who is greater than everything, are in need of His help. We have to understand that we are in need of His assistance, and that true success and true aid comes from Allah. It's not about me and what I'm going to talk to this one, I'm going to make these connections, I'm going to do this and that. It's about Allah. So we have to do, as Shaykh Yasser mentioned last week, we have to surrender to Allah. Let all of our egos and the things that we think that we actually have put together to achieve things go, and understand that even connecting those dots is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then once some blessings come, whether they come in abundance or they come as a flicker of a light, we have to understand that this is from Allah and take advantage of it. Perhaps I didn't get the car I wanted, but I got a car, alhamdulillah. So what am I going to use this car for? Am I going to deliver people back and forth? Am I going to come the third Saturday every month and help out MCSS? Am I going to exhaust my means to go to the masjid now because I have a vehicle? What are we doing with the blessing that it wasn't the Range Rover I wanted, or it wasn't the Avalon that I wanted. I just have the Corolla. What am I going to do with what I actually was given? Perhaps I don't have a car. I have legs, alhamdulillah. I have enough to buy a bus ticket, alhamdulillah. Perhaps I don't have the ability to do that. Alhamdulillah, I have whatever else I have. We have to take whatever we do have and maximize it to its fullest capacity. We have to take whatever we have. Perhaps whatever it may be, we have to maximize it. But that's just for ourselves, brothers and sisters. That's about me, Abdul-Malik. What are we going to do for our families? Understanding that our families are built up based upon what we're doing. We have to make sure we're fortifying our families with healthy means of communication from all levels. Making sure that husbands and wives are communicating on a healthy level. And that we're also mimicking, which is my next point, to our children, healthy means of communication. That we're communicating as a family and establishing in our family not only healthy communications between ourselves, but healthy communications with Allah. How are we talking about Allah to our spouses, to our families, to our children? And then after healthy means of communication, we have to make sure that after we've established this foundation, we learn to trust. Wallahi, for some of us, trust is a very difficult thing. Trust has been burnt. We've gone through difficulty at many different points in our lives, but we have to strive to trust in our partners, trust in our families, and more importantly, trust in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That I have chosen to be in this nucleus, to be in this family for a reason. I've chosen to be a part of this for a higher purpose. So if something comes by, I'm not tested by it, no matter what it may be. But it's about the trust that I've established and what I'm trying to get and to reach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for. After we've done that, we have to make sure we're making and setting the best example for our children. Wallahi, our children are the future of this ummah. And if we aren't establishing a good example for them, then we have no future. If we're teaching our children to be egotistical, to be narcissistic, to be capitalistic, if these are the messages that we're teaching our children, things are difficult, buy something. When I'm going through a hard time, I'm going to bang my head up against the wall, or resort to drugs, or resort to alcohol, or whatever vice we have. We're mimicking this for our children. And we have to make sure that we're not setting a bad example, and make sure that we're taking advantage of the situation we're in. Studies have shown that children, the younger they are more likely to mimic in a general sense. So no matter what we're doing, our children are watching. They're going to see it, and they're going to try to hold this as an example they live their lives. When we start to get older, then we can have selectivity in how we mimic and what we choose to follow. But when they're still young, we have to set this example. We can't wait until they get older to say, excuse me, Allah will guide them. No, we have to take advantage of every single moment that we have. Excuse me. Because with mimicking, with the example that we're setting, it has many, many different effects on our children. One effect is that when we set the opposite of what we're telling our children to do, when we do this, we then are now sending mixed messages. And it's less likely that our children will take our words seriously. It's less likely they'll take heed of what we're saying. And when we do this, they can recognize our inconsistencies. So if we are being inconsistent as adults, as parents, as chaperones and guardians, then how are they going to grow up to be in their life? Are they going to be inconsistent with their judgments, inconsistent with their commitments, inconsistent with Allah wa'udhu billah? What are we teaching our children? And when we are inconsistent with the mimicking what we're saying versus what we're doing, then we're more likely to have problems. What does that mean, brothers and sisters? The problems that we have with our children are usually resorted in what we have not done or have done in the wrong way. Granted, everyone is given their set of tests. Granted, everyone is different. But brothers and sisters, we have to take responsibility for ourselves and for our families, whether it be our children or our partners. We have to make sure that we are setting a good example and make sure that we are upholding what we would like and what we expect from them. Because at the end of the day, brothers and sisters, and I'll close on this note, it's all an amana. It's all but a trust, something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has left for us that we're going to be held accountable for on a later day. When you lease a car, you're going to be asked about how many miles are used on it. Did you get in an accident? Did you make aftermarket modifications on the car? What did you do with this lease, this loan that you were given? When you borrow money, do you return the money with the amount that you were given in the timely fashion that you were given? Well, brothers and sisters, we don't know when the end of our lease is. We don't know when we're going to have to return this thing that has been given to us, brothers and sisters. So what are we doing with it right now? Are we using it to the best of its ability? Are we trying to take advantage of it, or are we not? Because brothers and sisters, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul is going to taste death. And so I have to work on that for me, and I have to try to help you do that as well. And we have to work together so we can uplift our communities and take our responsibilities sincerely and truly. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to have the iman, to have the belief like Lady Hajar. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us not only the belief, but the fortitude and the perseverance that Hajar had. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to have bonds with our partners and with our spouses built on healthy communications and trust like Hajar had. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enrich our communities with iman, enrich our communities and our families with trust, enrich our communities with a belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to enable us to be good examples for our children, to enable us to uphold the amana that He has given us so that we can uphold this rightfully and dutifully by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to never leave us to our own selves. Yeah, Allah, never leave us to the deficiencies that I have. Enable me to, all of us, to persevere through that and to understand that we will be held accountable for the amana that we were given. وَأَقُولُ قَوْلِي هَذَا وَأَسْتَغْفِرُ اللَّهَ لِي وَلَكُمْ لِسَائِرِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ وَاسْتَغْفِرُوهُ وَأَتُوبُ إِلَيْهِ أَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ.